A grey aluminium box about the size of a paperback, bolted to the side of a water-cooled exhaust manifold, close enough to the hottest casting on the engine that you cannot hold a hand on it after 20 minutes of motoring. Hard-mounted, so it absorbs every vibration the engine makes. Inside are two electrolytic capacitors and a 32-bit processor with 64 kilobytes of memory. Volvo Penta has redesigned that box 15 times in 19 years. It does not run the engine. If you have ever paid a marine price for a part you later found on a tractor shelf, put the engine and the part number in the comments. I want to see how far this goes. This is what Yachts and Boats does. Subscribe so you catch the next one. We followed 3 brands of small sailboat auxiliary diesel out to the end of their working lives. Yanmar, Volvo Penta, Beta Marine. Not 3 engines pulled off 3 random boats. The documented ownership record on all 3, factory service campaigns, part number revision histories, published assessments from working marine mechanics, and the accounts of owners who paid the bills. 10,000 hours is the number that matters. A well-maintained sailboat diesel reaches roughly 5,000 hours before a major overhaul. Worked hard and serviced properly, 8,000. The upper end of documented expectation sits at 10,000 hours and 30 years of service. The average recreational boater logs about 200 hours a year, so an 8,000-hour diesel outlives 40 seasons. Almost none of these engines are retired because the iron wore out. That is the whole reason this comparison exists. We judged all 3 against the same 4 checkpoints in the same order every time. 1. The parts channel. Can you buy a base engine part outside the marine price sheet? 2. Electronic dependency. Will the engine start without a proprietary box? 3. The documented failure mode. Not the reputation. The record. 4. Dealer independence. Can it be repaired 1,000 miles from an authorized agent? Start with the parts channel because it decides the other 3. Beta Marine has built marinized Kubota industrial diesels since 1987, 14 to 105 horsepower. The Beta 20 makes 20 horsepower at 3,600 revolutions per minute from 719 cubic centimeters and weighs 106 kilograms. Yanmar builds its own blocks, 8 to 900 horsepower, inboard diesel only. No stern drives, no pod drives. Volvo Penta covers 5 to 900 horsepower with over 4,000 dealers worldwide, which is the largest service network in this market by a wide margin. Now the part that reframes everything after it. Volvo Penta's smaller sailboat engines are not built by Volvo Penta. They are built by Perkins and given the Volvo green paint. Cruising World reported this plainly in January of 2024, and Perkins uses the Kubota diesel as its base engine, then marinizes it to Perkins specification. Read that chain again. Kubota builds the block. Perkins marinizes it. Volvo paints it and sells it. Beta Marine buys the same Kubota engines and marinizes them in the United Kingdom. Kubota does not sell a marine engine under its own name anywhere in this market. It supplies the block and stays invisible while both brands build reputations on an engine neither designed. 2 of the 3 brands in this comparison descend from the same Japanese tractor engine. One of them tells you which one. Beta ships a Kubota cross-reference manual with the engine. Beta Marine US advertises itself as a parts source for other Kubota-based engine needs, and it holds that position on its own website today. Owners are pointed at Kubota dealers for base engine parts, filters, impellers, gaskets, overhaul kits, bought at agricultural prices in any country with farms. Beta Marine US keeps service parts in stock at its facility in eastern North Carolina and ships the same day. Registered members of its online parts store take 10% off the order. The company assembles marine generators in the United States as well. Volvo's route runs through Volvo's parts counter. Checkpoint 3 belongs to Yanmar for a moment, because Yanmar earned something here that neither of the Kubota engines can claim. Its compression ignition engines start without glow plugs, which deletes an entire electrical failure point from every cold morning. That design also hands the owner a diagnostic for nothing. When a Yanmar grows harder to start on a warm day, compression is falling, and the engine told you before any gauge did. This is the part that makes no sense to me as an engineering decision and perfect sense as a commercial one. The block is common ancestry. The invoice is a choice. In Cruising World's Boat of the Year fleet that season, 24 sailboats came with 11 Yanmars and 10 Volvo Pentas. 2 brands, 21 of 24 production boats. Most owners never chose their engine at all. It arrived under the cockpit floor with the hull. The ledger does not lie, and on checkpoint 1, before a single bolt comes loose, Beta is already ahead. The engine was never the problem. The box bolted to it was. Volvo Penta released the current D series in about 2006. The larger models run common rail electronic injection, but the smaller D1 and D2 engines, up to 4 cylinders and 75 horsepower, still use traditional mechanical injection pumps, purely mechanical engines, so Volvo interfaced them to its electronic gauges with a separate module, the MDI, the mechanical diesel interface. Eric Brecher is a marine design engineer who has documented that module in public since 2019 and updated his findings as recently as May of this year. He is not a brand critic. He calls the Volvo D240 an otherwise excellent engine. He also compiled the revision history. Part number changes in 2006, 2007, 2010, 2011 when Volvo added a 15-amp blade fuse, 2015, 2017, twice, 2019, and 2 more revisions in 2025. 15 documented part numbers in 19 years. In April of 2018, Volvo Penta began replacing early units of 1 revision for erratic behavior. In August of 2023, it opened a far wider campaign covering 4 separate part numbers, again for erratic behavior. That campaign is open until the end of November 2030. Brecher's own conclusion on the driver behind all of it. The only reason for the many revisions has been reliability. Here is what the module actually does. It switches the glow plugs. It energizes the starter solenoid and the fuel stop solenoid. It excites the alternator about 1 second after the engine fires. And it reads the sensors and pushes the numbers to the gauges over a data bus. Emissions compliance on these engines is met entirely by the mechanical injection system and the thermostat. The box has no emissions function. It has no control over the engine once the engine is running, which means the failures produce a specific kind of phone call. A brand new D250 dead at 5 engine hours. A D260 replaced under warranty at 18 hours after 8 sea trials. A 2019 D240 that went dark at 37 hours. One owner of twin D130 engines on a catamaran replaced 5 modules across 2 engines starting in February of 2018, and the first failure did not survive 2 minutes. His original engines from 2009 had run 880 hours without a single issue. Another owner, a 2017 D130 in light use, went through 3 modules before the 4th held. Volvo's own dealer network publishes the aging curve. These modules show age-related failures after 7 to 12 years, regardless of operating hours. Regardless of hours. The clock runs whether you sail or not. A replacement module was quoted at $800 to a United States owner, £380 in the United Kingdom. One British owner stopped buying them. He built a replacement panel from a farm machinery ignition switch, 2 relays, fuses, a cheap tachometer, and a power resistor. £250 total, and no Volvo part in it. And when the module dies at sea, the fix is a hand tool. Pull the rubber boots off the 3 terminal posts, short the middle post to the preheat post for 20 seconds, then short the middle post to the starter solenoid. The engine starts. It was always going to start. It is a mechanical diesel. What you lose is oil pressure and coolant temperature monitoring, which is why the honest repair is a set of analog gauges and an alarm circuit, not nothing at all. Brecher priced that route himself and concluded that replacing the whole Volvo monitoring system with conventional gauges costs no more in materials than replacing the black box and ends the problem permanently. Then there is the detail that follows the boat into the brokerage listing. Fitting a new module resets the running hours on the tachometer to 0. Owners report it independently across different forums over years. Swap the box and the hour meter starts again from nothing. Think about what that does at the point of sale. A boat listed at 1100 hours, a buyer squinting at the panel, doing the arithmetic on remaining life, writing a check against that number. And the number is describing the age of a circuit board. No seller has to lie for this to happen. Nobody commits fraud. The number simply stops meaning what everyone in the transaction believes it means. That is a flag, not a verdict. I cannot tell you any specific listing is wrong. Which number on a used boat do you actually trust, and why that one? I want to hear it. The strongest case against the box came from someone with 60 of them. A charter operator running a fleet of Volvo-powered yachts, managing 60 electronic control panels, ran his own field test over 15 years. His conclusion contradicts the heat and vibration story. 90% of his failures trace to the start panels, which are not waterproof, rather than to the engine itself. He moved some panels inside the boats. Those boats stopped failing. The ones with panels still exposed on deck kept repeating the fault. Nothing else about that fleet changed except where the panel lived. That is the closest thing to a controlled test anyone has published on this module, and it came from an operator, not a manufacturer. Now the part that keeps this honest, because Yanmar wins most of the arguments in this comparison and has one flatly indefensible design failure. A working marine mechanic writing for Practical Sailor in August of 2025 put it bluntly. Yanmar built a simple, reliable engine and failed royally with the exhaust elbow design. The original mild steel and cast iron elbows corrode internally, rust through, and crack at the weld to the flange. He says it is one of the reasons he ends up pulling cylinder heads. The elbow mixes engine coolant into the exhaust gas to drop the temperature before it reaches rubber hose and fiberglass. When it blocks or splits, seawater goes backwards into the engine. Owner service lives on the same part range from 300 hours on a 3YM30 to 17 years on a 3GM30F. A working interval sits at about 5 years or 700 hours. Sale magazine priced the part at $130. One owner paid $155 from Yanmar after his sheared part underway and he was towed home. The fix is not from Yanmar. An American aftermarket house machines the same elbow from investment, cast 316 stainless steel, replacing at least 6 Yanmar part numbers. Investment casting removes the weld that fails. Line the money up the way the record actually shows it. The Yanmar elbow caught on schedule $130 to $155 and an afternoon. A replacement Volvo panel built from farm parts, 250 pounds once. A Volvo module from the dealer, $800, and the clock starts again at 7 to 12 years. A remanufactured Yanmar 3YM30 installed with a warranty runs $9,000 to $13,000 with labor on top at $150 an hour. And a Beta 30 was quoted at $12,500 in Texas and $8,900 in California. The same engine. 2 dealers. The number of findings does not decide this. What decides it is what each finding costs the man who owns it, and whether he is permitted to fix it himself. Volvo Penta deserves its strongest case made here because it has one. Breccia, who has done more public engineering work on that module than anyone alive, does not blame Volvo for most failures. He blames the installation. A high-resistance battery path collapses the voltage during cranking, and the end of every crank throws a negative spike back into the system. Add an alternator load dump, a ground relay fitted without a diode, or a worn isolator switch, and the module absorbs all of it. His words, "This has demonstrably ended many modules, sometimes several in succession, with the blame going to the black box and to Volvo Penta when it is in fact an installation problem." His instruction is unambiguous. Do not replace a failed module until the path to the battery is above suspicion, or you will lose the next one too. Use threaded stud batteries and a quality disconnect switch, with every connection clean, bright, and tightly bolted. Then relocate the module off the manifold to a cooler, low vibration spot on the engine bay bulkhead before the first start. Every source in this story agrees on that last one, including Volvo's own dealers. Do that, and 4,000 dealers worldwide becomes a real advantage instead of a leash. In January of 2026, a Delaware state representative named Rich Collins introduced House Bill 279 the Marine Equipment Right to Repair Act, with Senator Russell Huxtable as Senate sponsor. If it passes, it becomes the first state right to repair law in America written specifically for marine equipment. Collins gave his reason directly. The average person is being excluded from boating because everything about it has become so expensive, and he believes computerization and the cost of repair are a large part of that. Opposing marine right to repair, the National Marine Manufacturers Association and the Marine Retailers Association of the Americas have worked in coalition with manufacturers. Their strongest argument is real, releasing embedded engine code conflicts with emissions mandates under the Clean Air Act. On these particular engines, that argument meets the finding from Brecher. The module governs no emissions function whatsoever. Both things are true at once, and the vote will decide which one counts. Which brings me to the engine that settles the rubric, and it is not one of the three in the title. Universal Motor Corporation is out of business. The company is gone. Its Kubota-based M-Series engines are still being rebuilt in 2026. Not replaced. Rebuilt, Practical Sailors Mechanic states why, in plain language. Because the block is a Kubota, there is a healthy aftermarket in affordable parts, not marine-priced parts, including complete overhaul kits, so he rebuilds these engines for customers instead of forcing them to buy a whole new one. The manufacturer went under. The engine survived it. That is the answer to the whole comparison. On the 4 checkpoints, across 15 module revisions, 2 open service campaigns, a charter fleet of 60 panels, 1 Delaware bill, and 3 brands descended from 2 blocks, the winner is Beta Marine. Not because Beta builds a better engine than Yanmar. On pure iron, Yanmar has the stronger case, and a Yanmar can be rebuilt in a cockpit with no special tools. Beta wins because Beta hands you the Kubota number and then gets out of your way. Whether that makes Beta the better company, or simply the last one still selling the old arrangement, is a fair question, and I am not going to pretend it is settled. Because the engine that outlives its own manufacturer is always the one nobody engineered a toll booth into. Once you understand that you are not buying a machine, you are buying a parts channel, you will never read a brokerage listing the same way again. That is what Yachts and Boats does. Subscribe so you catch the next one.